Blood dripped from Zara Calloway's lip as the cruel leather whip cracked against her back for the fourth time, tearing through the thin fabric of her already shredded dress. The scorching New Mexico sun beat down mercilessly on the makeshift auction platform where she stood, hands bound before her with coarse rope that cut into her wrists. It was May 1875, and Zara had never imagined her life would come to this, being sold like cattle to the highest bidder in a dusty frontier town called Redemption Creek. "This one's got spirit," bellowed the auctioneer, a portly man with tobacco-stained teeth and eyes that held no humanity. "Might need breaking in, but she'll make a fine addition to any household or establishment." His words drew raucous laughter from the crowd of men gathered in the town square. Zara refused to lower her gaze despite the pain radiating across her back. At 22, she had endured enough hardship to know that showing weakness would only invite more cruelty. 3 weeks ago, she had been traveling west with a wagon train when bandits attacked. The massacre left her the sole survivor, only to be captured and brought to this hellhole to be sold. $500, called a voice from the crowd, belonging to a man whose very appearance made Zara's skin crawl, the owner of the town's most notorious brothel. 600, countered another, a cattle baron known for working his help to death. The auctioneer grinned wickedly. "She's still not showing proper respect." He nodded to his assistant, who raised the whip again. "That's enough." The voice cut through the murmurs of the crowd like a knife. Heads turned to see a tall figure making his way through the throng. The sun silhouetted him at first, but as he stepped into the clearing before the platform, Zara could make out his features. He wore a dark duster that had seen better days, and beneath it, simple clothing that spoke of hard work rather than wealth. His face was partially obscured by several days' worth of stubble, but his eyes, piercing blue and filled with barely contained fury, were fixed on the auctioneer. "I said that's enough," he repeated, his voice carrying a quiet authority that somehow silenced the raucous crowd. "No whip will ever touch her again." The auctioneer scoffed. "This ain't your business, Lawson. Unless you're planning to bid, step back." Lawson Gabriel, for that was his name, reached into his coat and pulled out a small leather pouch. $1,000, he said, tossing the pouch onto the platform. The sound of gold coins clinking inside caused a collective gasp from the onlookers. The auctioneer's eyes widened as he quickly scooped up the pouch and verified its contents. "Sold," he declared hastily, not wanting to risk losing such a sum. "She's all yours, Gabriel." Lawson climbed the steps to the platform in 2 long strides. He removed his duster and gently draped it over Zara's shoulders before cutting the ropes that bound her wrists. His touch was surprisingly gentle for hands so weathered. "Can you walk?" he asked quietly, his voice meant only for her ears. Zara nodded, though she wasn't entirely certain. Her legs felt weak, and her back burned with every slight movement. Still, she would rather collapse than appear helpless before this crowd of vultures. Lawson seemed to understand. He placed a steadying hand under her elbow and guided her down the steps. The crowd parted before them, some men muttering in disappointment while others watched with curious eyes. Zara kept her gaze forward, unwilling to give them the satisfaction of seeing her fear. They walked in silence through the dusty streets until they reached a modest-looking building with a sign that read, "Gabriel's Smithy." Lawson led her inside, away from prying eyes, and only then did Zara allow herself to take a full breath. The interior was surprisingly cool compared to the blistering heat outside. The forge was not lit, and tools hung neatly on the walls. Through a doorway, she could see what appeared to be living quarters, simple but clean. "Sit," Lawson said, gesturing to a chair. "I'll fetch some water and something for those wounds." Zara remained standing, clutching his duster around her shoulders. "Why did you buy me?" she asked, her voice hoarse from thirst and screaming. Lawson paused, studying her with those intense blue eyes. "I didn't buy you," he said firmly. "I paid to stop what was happening. There's a difference. And what happens now? What do you expect in return?" A shadow passed over his face. "Nothing. You're free to go whenever you choose. But you're hurt, and I reckon you have nowhere to go, or you wouldn't have ended up on that platform. So I'm offering you shelter until you heal and decide what's next." Zara wanted to believe him, but experience had taught her that men rarely did anything without expecting something in return. "Just like that," he confirmed, disappearing into the back room. He returned with a basin of water, clean cloths, and a jar of salve. Setting them on a table, he said, "I'll step outside while you tend to yourself. There's a dress on the bed that might fit you, belonged to my sister before she moved east with her husband. When you're ready, I'll have food waiting." True to his word, Lawson left her alone. Zara stood frozen for several moments, half expecting him to return with different intentions. When he didn't, she slowly made her way to the back room. The dress was simple faded blue cotton, but clean and whole, unlike her tattered garments. She winced as she peeled off the remains of her dress, revealing angry welts across her back. Using the water and cloth, she gingerly cleaned herself, applying the salve to her wounds. It stung at first, but soon brought blessed relief. Once dressed, she took a moment to look around the room. It was spartanly furnished, but tidy. A few books sat on a small shelf, surprising for a blacksmith in a frontier town. There were no personal touches that might reveal more about the man who had just spent a small fortune to rescue her. When she finally emerged, Lawson was sitting at a small table, 2 bowls of stew before him. He stood when he saw her, a gesture that seemed oddly formal for their surroundings. "Better?" he asked. Zara nodded, taking the seat across from him. "Why would you spend so much money on a stranger?" Lawson passed her a chunk of bread. "Eat first. We can talk after." They ate in silence, Zara realizing just how famished she was only when the food was before her. The stew was simple but hearty, with chunks of venison and vegetables. She finished her bowl before Lawson was halfway through his own. "There's more if you want it," he offered. Zara shook her head, suddenly embarrassed by her voraciousness. "Thank you. It was good." Lawson nodded, finishing his own meal before leaning back in his chair. "To answer your question, I've seen enough suffering in my life to last several lifetimes. What they were doing to you wasn't right. No person should be bought or sold, and no one deserves to be whipped for the entertainment of others. Most men in these parts don't share that sentiment," Zara observed. "I'm not most men." There was no boast in his words, just a simple statement of fact. "Are you religious then? A missionary of some sort?" A bitter laugh escaped him. "Hardly. Just someone trying to live with himself." He stood, collecting their bowls. "You can take the bed. I'll sleep out here." "Mr. Gabriel, Lawson," he corrected. "Lawson, I don't know how to repay you, but I will. Somehow." He shook his head. "There's nothing to repay. Get some rest. Tomorrow, if you're feeling up to it, we can discuss what you want to do next." That night, lying on the first real bed she'd had in weeks, Zara stared at the ceiling, trying to make sense of her situation. She had gone from captivity to freedom in the span of hours, all because of a stranger's unexpected kindness. Sleep eventually claimed her, but not before she silently vowed to discover what had motivated Lawson Gabriel's extraordinary act of mercy. Dawn broke with a gentle glow through the small window of Lawson's quarters. Zara woke disoriented, momentarily forgetting where she was until the events of the previous day came rushing back. The pain in her back had dulled to a persistent ache, but she could move more freely than she had expected. She found a basin of fresh water and a clean cloth laid out for her. After washing and dressing, she ventured into the main room of the smithy. Lawson wasn't there, but a pot of coffee sat warming on a small stove, and beside it, a plate with bread and honey. Zara was halfway through her modest breakfast when the door opened. Lawson entered, already looking as though he'd been working for hours. His sleeves were rolled up, revealing forearms corded with muscle, the result of years working metal with hammer and anvil. "You're up," he observed. "How are you feeling?" "Better," Zara replied. "Thank you for the food." Lawson nodded, pouring himself a cup of coffee. "I have to work today. Several horses need shoeing, and the stagecoach company needs repairs to their coach. You're welcome to rest here, or there's a small garden out back if you want some air." Zara straightened. "I can help. I'm stronger than I look." Lawson studied her for a moment. "Your back needs time to heal. But if you're set on being useful, there's mending that needs doing. My sewing skills leave much to be desired." She nodded, relieved to have something to occupy her hands and mind. Lawson showed her to a basket of clothing with various tears and worn spots, then returned to his forge. Through the open doorway, Zara could see him working, the rhythmic sound of his hammer against the anvil oddly comforting. As she sewed, Zara found herself studying him when he wasn't looking. He was younger than she had first thought, perhaps 30, though the frontier had a way of aging men prematurely. His movements were efficient and practiced, his focus absolute when engaged in his craft. Occasionally, townsfolk would arrive with work for him. Zara noted that while they treated Lawson with respect, there was a certain distance in their interactions. He was polite but reserved, revealing little of himself in conversation. It was clear he was known in Redemption Creek, but not truly part of its community. By midday, the heat from the forge had filled the smithy. Lawson took a break, downing water from a dipper before stepping outside for some air. He returned with 2 apples, offering one to Zara. "Thank you," she said, accepting the fruit. After a moment's hesitation, she asked, "How long have you been in Redemption Creek?" 3 years, Lawson replied, leaning against the doorframe. "Came west after the war." "You fought?" He nodded. "Union Army. Tennessee mostly. My father and brother both died at Shiloh," Zara said quietly. Lawson's expression grew somber. "I was there. Wouldn't wish that hell on anyone." He took another bite of his apple, chewing thoughtfully. "Were you coming west to start over when the bandits attacked?" Zara blinked in surprise. "How did you know?" "Word travels fast in small towns. When those bandits brought you in, stories circulated about where they'd found you." "Yes," she confirmed. "My mother died last winter. There was nothing left for me in Missouri. I joined a wagon train headed for California, hoping to find work as a teacher." "You're educated then?" "My father was a schoolmaster before the war. He taught me everything he knew." A bittersweet smile crossed her face. "He always said knowledge was the one thing that couldn't be stolen from you." Lawson seemed to consider this. "Yet here you are, having lost everything but your life." "And my knowledge," Zara added with unexpected defiance. "They couldn't take that." For the first time, she saw a genuine smile cross Lawson's face, brief but transformative. It softened the hard lines of his features, revealing a glimpse of who he might have been before whatever hardships had shaped him. "No, they couldn't," he agreed. With that, he returned to his forge, the conversation apparently over. The day passed in companionable industry. By sunset, Zara had mended all the clothing and tidied Lawson's sparse living quarters, while he had shod 6 horses and completed repairs on the stagecoach. They shared a simple supper of beans, bacon, and cornbread, their conversation limited to practical matters. As Lawson cleared away their plates, Zara finally asked the question that had been on her mind all day. "What will happen when people realize you didn't buy me for?" "The usual reasons?" Lawson's hand stilled. "What do you mean?" "A man spends $1,000 on a woman at auction. People expect certain things. When they realize I'm not serving you in that capacity, what then?" He resumed his task, his back to her. "What others think isn't my concern. Never has been." "But it should be mine," Zara insisted. "I don't want to cause you trouble after all you've done for me." Lawson turned to face her. "The kind of men who would give you trouble for being your own woman aren't men whose opinions should matter to either of us." His conviction was unwavering, but Zara wasn't satisfied. "That's a noble sentiment, but this is a frontier town. I've seen enough to know how things work. Men don't spend good money without expecting something in return. Then perhaps it's time someone showed them a different way." Lawson's tone suggested the subject was closed. He picked up his hat from a hook by the door. "I need to check on something at the livery. I won't be long. Lock the door behind me." After he left, Zara sat alone in the gathering darkness, wondering what manner of man Lawson Gabriel truly was. His actions defied everything she thought she knew about the harsh realities of frontier life. Yet there was pain in him. She had glimpsed it in unguarded moments when he thought she wasn't looking. She rose and moved to the small bookshelf, curious about what a blacksmith in a rough and tumble town would read. There were several volumes on metalworking, as expected, but also works by Emerson and Thoreau, a well-worn Bible, and most surprising of all, a collection of Shakespeare's sonnets. Zara was leafing through the poetry when a knock at the door startled her. Setting the book aside, she approached cautiously. "Who is it?" she called, remembering Lawson's instruction to lock the door. "Eliza Thornton, dear. I'm the doctor's wife. I've brought some healing salve for your back." Zara hesitated, then unbolted the door and opened it a crack. A kindly-faced woman in her 50s stood outside, holding a small jar. "Mr. Gabriel asked my husband for something stronger than what he had on hand," she explained. "May I come in?" Zara opened the door wider to admit her visitor. Mrs. Thornton set her jar on the table and turned to Zara with assessing eyes. "Let me have a look at those wounds," she said matter-of-factly. "I've tended more injuries than I care to count in this town." Reluctantly, Zara turned and lowered the back of her dress just enough to reveal the healing welts. She heard Mrs. Thornton's sharp intake of breath. "Barbaric," the older woman muttered. "Simply barbaric. Here, let me apply this. It will help with the healing and prevent scarring." As gentle fingers applied the cool salve, Mrs. Thornton spoke conversationally. "Lawson Gabriel is a good man. Keeps to himself mostly, but fair in his dealings and skilled at his trade. When my husband couldn't save his sister's baby 2 years back, he forged the most beautiful little angel for the grave, free of charge. Never said a word about it, just left it on our porch." Zara absorbed this information silently. It aligned with what she had observed, but revealed a depth of compassion she hadn't fully appreciated. "There," Mrs. Thornton said, finishing her ministrations. "That should help considerably. Apply it morning and night for the next week." "Thank you," Zara said sincerely. "May I ask, what happened to his sister?" Mrs. Thornton's expression grew sad. "Came down with child fever after the birth. Nearly died herself. Her husband took her back east to her people when she recovered, but Lawson stayed on. I think he felt he needed to be near where the little one was laid to rest." The door opened then, and Lawson entered. He nodded to Mrs. Thornton. "I see you got here before me. Thank you for bringing the salve." "It was no trouble," the doctor's wife replied, gathering her shawl. "I've instructed Miss Calloway on its use." She patted Lawson's arm as she passed. "Don't be a stranger, young man. The doctor and I would welcome your company for Sunday dinner any time." After she left, a slightly awkward silence fell between Lawson and Zara. He hung his hat on its hook and moved to stoke the small fire in the stove. "Mrs. Thornton mentioned your sister and her baby," Zara said quietly. "I'm very sorry for your loss." Lawson's shoulders tensed, but he didn't turn. "It was a long time ago. 2 years isn't so long." He straightened, finally facing her. "No, I suppose not." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Rebecca, my sister, she wasn't meant for frontier life, but she followed her husband west because she loved him. The baby came early, and there were complications. By the time they fetched the doctor." His voice trailed off. "And you stayed when they left." Lawson nodded. "Someone needed to tend the grave, and I had nowhere else to go." The simple honesty of his statement touched Zara deeply. "I understand that feeling." His eyes met hers, and in that moment, something passed between them, a recognition of shared loneliness, of lives derailed by circumstances beyond their control. "It's getting late," Lawson said, breaking the spell. "You should rest. Your body's still healing." Zara wanted to say more, to prolong this moment of connection, but she recognized his need for space. "Good night, then," she said, retreating to the back room. As she applied the salve to her wounds before bed, Zara found herself thinking about the enigmatic blacksmith. His kindness came wrapped in gruffness, his compassion hidden behind reserve. But there was goodness in him, a rare commodity in a world that had shown her little of it lately. Sleep came easier that night, her dreams undisturbed by the horrors of recent weeks. For the first time since the attack on the wagon train, Zara felt something that had been lost to her hope. The following days fell into a pattern. Zara's back healed quickly with Mrs. Thornton's salve, and she found herself taking on more responsibilities around the smithy. She cooked their meals, kept the living quarters tidy, and even helped in small ways with Lawson's work, learning to pump the bellows and sort the various tools he needed. Their conversations remained largely practical, but occasionally, usually in the quiet of evening, they would share fragments of their lives before Redemption Creek. Zara told him about growing up in a small Missouri town, her father's school, and her dreams of becoming a teacher herself. Lawson spoke less of his past, but she learned he had grown up on a small farm in Pennsylvania, apprenticed with a blacksmith before the war, and had never returned home afterward. What he didn't say spoke volumes. Zara recognized the shadows that crossed his face when certain topics arose: the war, his family, the years immediately following the conflict. She didn't press, understanding all too well that some wounds were best left undisturbed. A week after her rescue, Zara was hanging laundry in the small yard behind the smithy when she overheard voices from the street out front. "Seems like Gabriel's getting his money's worth out of that auction girl," a man's voice sneered. Quiet work for quiet pay. Another replied with a crude laugh. Wonder if he'd consider renting her out when he's done. Zara's hands trembled as she pinned a shirt to the line. The voices moved on, but their words remained, poisoning the peace she had begun to feel. When Lawson returned from delivering a repaired plow to a nearby farm, he found her sitting at the table, hands folded tightly in her lap. "What's wrong?" he asked immediately, setting down his tools. "I can't stay here," Zara said, her voice steady despite her inner turmoil. "People are talking. It's not right for your reputation." Lawson's jaw tightened. "Who's been talking? It doesn't matter. What matters is that they're right. This arrangement isn't proper, and it puts you in a difficult position. You've done more than enough for me already. I should move on." "And go where?" Lawson challenged. "With what money? Doing what work?" Zara lifted her chin. "I could find employment. Perhaps the hotel needs help, or the hotel owner would have you serving more than meals, and you know it." Lawson cut in, his voice hard. "This town has few options for a woman alone, especially one with no connections or references. Then I'll go elsewhere. The next stagecoach costs money you don't have to take you to towns no different from this one." Lawson ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "Listen to me, Zara. I understand your concern, but leaving now, unprepared, would be foolish." She stood, anger flaring. "So I'm to be dependent on your charity indefinitely? How does that make me any less bought than if you had other intentions when you paid that $1,000? The moment the words left her mouth, she regretted them. Hurt flashed across Lawson's face before his expression shuddered. "I never considered it charity," he said quietly, "and I never considered you bought." Before she could respond, he turned and walked out, leaving Zara alone with the weight of her unfair accusation. She didn't see him again until nightfall. When he finally returned, the smell of whiskey accompanied him, though his steps were steady. He placed a small pouch on the table before her. $200, he said without preamble. "Enough for stagecoach fare to Sacramento and to keep you while you find teaching work. It's yours whenever you decide to leave." Zara stared at the pouch, then at Lawson. "I can't accept this." "You can and you will." His tone brooked no argument. "I won't have you feeling trapped here out of financial necessity." "Lawson, about what I said earlier," he shook his head. "You weren't entirely wrong. I put you in an awkward position without considering all the implications. That's on me, not you. But your intentions were good. I know that now." Zara stood and approached him. "And I'm grateful, truly. But can't you see that by giving me this money, you're solving only part of the problem? What about you? What happens when I leave and the gossips decide you paid good money for a woman who ran off?" Lawson gave a bitter laugh. "I've weathered worse storms than small-town gossip. Have you considered there might be another solution?" Zara asked, gathering her courage. "One that would silence the gossips while allowing me to repay your kindness?" He looked at her warily. "What do you have in mind?" "Marriage," she said simply. Lawson's expression shifted from wariness to shock. "Marriage," he repeated flatly. "It would be an arrangement of convenience," Zara hurried to explain. "I would keep house and help in the smithy. In return, I would have the protection of your name and a roof over my head. When enough time has passed, and I've saved sufficient funds of my own, we could quietly dissolve the arrangement, and I could move on with my reputation intact." Lawson stared at her as if she had suggested something utterly outlandish. "You can't be serious." "I'm perfectly serious. It's a practical solution. Marriage isn't something to enter into lightly, even as an arrangement," he countered. "And I'm the last man who should be anyone's husband, even in name only. Why? Because you prefer your solitude? Or is there some dark secret that makes you unfit for marriage?" Zara challenged. His eyes flashed. "You don't know what you're asking. You don't know me, not really. I know you saved me when no one else would. I know you've treated me with nothing but respect. I know you mourned your sister's child so deeply that you stayed in a town where you have few connections just to tend a grave." Zara took a step closer to him. "I know enough, Lawson Gabriel." He turned away, his shoulders rigid with tension. "You deserve better than a marriage of convenience to a blacksmith with no future to offer." "I deserve to make my own choices," Zara countered. "After everything that's happened, at least grant me that much agency." The silence stretched between them, filled with unspoken words and conflicting emotions. Finally, Lawson turned back to her. And I mean if we did this, There would need to be clear terms. You would be free to leave whenever you chose, no questions asked. The money would still be yours. And there would be no. He hesitated, color rising in his cheeks. No marital relations, Zara supplied, her own face warming. I understand. Lawson nodded stiffly. I'll need time to think on this. Of course, Zara agreed, relief flooding her that he hadn't outright rejected the idea. Take all the time you need. He picked up the pouch of money and pressed it into her hand. Regardless of what I decide, this is yours. I want that to be clear. As his calloused fingers brushed against her palm, Zara felt an unexpected jolt of awareness. Their eyes met briefly before Lawson stepped back, murmuring a quiet goodnight before retreating to his makeshift bed in the main room. Alone in the back room, Zara sat on the edge of the bed, the pouch of coins heavy in her hand. She had proposed the arrangement out of practicality, but the flutter in her chest when Lawson's fingers had touched hers suggested her motivations might not be entirely pragmatic. The realization was both troubling and exhilarating. Falling in love with the taciturn blacksmith would complicate an already complex situation. Yet as she tucked the money safely away and prepared for bed, Zara couldn't deny that Lawson Gabriel had come to mean more to her than simply her rescuer. Sleep eluded her that night as she contemplated the path ahead, wondering if she had just made the wisest decision of her life or the most foolish. 3 days passed with no mention of Zara's proposal. She and Lawson continued their daily routines, though an undercurrent of tension ran beneath their interactions. He spent more time than usual at the forge, often working well past sunset, while she found endless tasks to occupy herself inside the living quarters. On the 4th day, a commotion in the street drew Zara to the window. A stagecoach had arrived, and among the disembarking passengers was a well-dressed man who immediately began inquiring about something from the gathered townsfolk. She thought little of it until later that afternoon when a knock came at the smithy door. Lawson was at the forge, hammering out what would become hinges for the new schoolhouse door. Wiping her hands on her apron, Zara answered the knock to find the well-dressed stranger on the threshold. "Good day, madam," he said, removing his hat. "My name is Frederick Patterson. I'm looking for a Miss Zara Calloway." Zara's breath caught. "I'm Zara Calloway." Relief flooded the man's features. "Thank the Lord. I've been searching for you for weeks, ever since news reached us of the attack on the Henderson wagon train." "Us?" Zara echoed, confusion evident in her voice. "Your cousin, Elizabeth Calloway Watson. I'm her husband's business partner. When we learned of the attack and that you might have survived, she sent me to find you." Lawson had ceased his hammering, coming to stand behind Zara. "You have proof of who you are?" he asked, his tone protective. Patterson reached into his jacket and withdrew a letter sealed with wax. From Elizabeth herself. She also included this. He handed over a small daguerreotype that Zara recognized immediately herself and her cousin as young girls, sitting in her father's garden. She had given the identical image to Elizabeth years ago. Hands trembling slightly, Zara broke the seal on the letter and read the contents. It was indeed from her cousin, expressing grief over the loss of the wagon train and joy at hearing Zara might have survived. Elizabeth and her husband had prospered in Sacramento, the letter explained, and they wanted Zara to join them. A teaching position awaited her at a respectable girls' school, along with a home with family who loved her. "Is it genuine?" Lawson asked quietly. Zara nodded, tears pricking her eyes. "Yes, it's from Elizabeth. We grew up together before her family moved west. I had planned to contact her once I reached California, but I never dreamed." Her voice trailed off. Mr. Patterson smiled kindly. "Mrs. Watson was most insistent that I find you and bring you safely to Sacramento. I've secured passage on tomorrow morning's westbound stage. All expenses paid, of course." Zara's mind reeled with the sudden turn of events. Just days ago, she had proposed a marriage of convenience to Lawson, seeing no other viable path forward. Now, an entirely different future had opened before her, one with family, meaningful work, and security. "This is wonderful news," Lawson said, his voice carefully neutral. "Exactly what you hoped for." She turned to look at him, searching his face for any sign of what he might be feeling, but his expression revealed nothing. "I'll give you time to discuss the particulars," Patterson said tactfully. "I'm staying at the hotel. Perhaps we could meet for supper to arrange the details? Yes, of course, Zara replied automatically, her thoughts still in disarray. After the businessman departed, an awkward silence fell between Zara and Lawson. He was the first to break it. "This solves everything," he said, moving back toward the forge. "No need for our arrangement now." Zara followed him, suddenly uncertain. "Lawson, it's what you wanted," he continued, his back to her as he stoked the forge fire. "A teaching position in a proper city, family to support you. Far better than a blacksmith shop in a frontier town." "I never said that," Zara protested. Lawson finally turned to face her, his expression carefully composed. "You didn't have to. It's the sensible choice, Zara. The right one. And if I'm not certain what the right choice is anymore?" A flicker of something fear, crossed his face before disappearing. "You will be given time to think clearly. What if I don't want to leave?" The words escaped before she could consider them fully. Lawson's hands clenched at his sides. "Don't say that. Not unless you mean it. And not out of some misplaced sense of obligation." "It's not obligation," Zara insisted, stepping closer to him. "These past days, working alongside you, building something here, it's felt right in a way few things have in my life." "And Sacramento? The teaching position? Your family?" Zara hesitated. "I don't know," she admitted. "It's all happened so quickly." Lawson nodded, as if her uncertainty confirmed something for him. "Then take the night to consider. Talk with Patterson. Get all the details. Make your decision with a clear head, not clouded by immediate circumstances." Though he didn't say it, Zara understood what he meant, not clouded by whatever feelings might be developing between them. Feelings neither had acknowledged openly. "All right," she agreed reluctantly. "I'll meet with him tonight and make my decision by morning." Lawson returned to his work without another word, the rhythmic sound of his hammer filling the smithy once more. Zara retreated to the living quarters, Elizabeth's letter clutched in her hand, her heart pulled in two opposing directions. That evening, Zara met Frederick Patterson at the hotel's small dining room. Over a meal finer than any she'd had since leaving Missouri, he detailed the life awaiting her in Sacramento, a private room in her cousin's spacious home, a position teaching literature and history at the Laurel Academy for young ladies, and entry into society through Elizabeth's connections. "Your cousin has been most anxious to find you," Patterson explained. "She speaks often of your shared childhood and regrets losing touch after your father's passing. The war made communication difficult," Zara acknowledged. "And afterward, Mother was ill for so long." Patterson nodded sympathetically. "Mrs. Watson understands. She only wishes to make amends now by offering you the home and opportunities you deserve." It was a generous offer, more than generous. A lifeline Zara would have grasped eagerly just weeks ago. Yet as Patterson outlined the comfortable, respectable life that awaited her, her thoughts kept returning to the smithy and the man whose quiet strength had become her anchor in a storm-tossed existence. "You seem hesitant, Miss Calloway," Patterson observed shrewdly. "Is there something holding you here in Redemption Creek?" Zara considered deflecting the question but opted for honesty. "I've formed attachments here. People who have shown me great kindness." "The blacksmith," Patterson said, not unkindly. "The hotel clerk mentioned you've been staying with him. He's the one who rescued you from that deplorable auction, I understand." "Yes, Lawson Gabriel. He's a good man." Patterson studied her thoughtfully. "I see. And these attachments, they're significant enough to make you question leaving?" "I don't know," Zara admitted. "A week ago, I would have said no. But now—" "Frontier life changes people," Patterson said with unexpected insight. "Creates bonds forged in hardship that can be stronger than those formed over years in civilization." He leaned forward slightly. "May I speak plainly, Miss Calloway?" Zara nodded, curious. "I've spent considerable time in these territories on business. I've seen good women trapped in difficult circumstances, making choices based on immediate security rather than long-term happiness. If your feelings for Mr. Gabriel are genuine, I would be the last to interfere. But if they stem from gratitude or a sense that he represents your only option for safety, I urge you to consider Elizabeth's offer carefully." His words struck uncomfortably close to Zara's own unacknowledged concerns. Was what she felt for Lawson truly the beginning of love, or merely the natural attachment of a rescued soul to her rescuer? "I appreciate your candor," Mr. Patterson, she said finally. I have much to consider before morning. The stagecoach leaves at 9, he reminded her gently. I'll await your decision, whatever it may be. Zara left the hotel with her thoughts in greater turmoil than before. The night air was cool as she walked slowly back toward the smithy, the weight of her impending decision heavy upon her shoulders. As she approached, she saw that the forge was dark, but lights still glowed from the windows of the living quarters. Lawson was waiting up for her. He looked up when she entered, setting aside the book he had been reading. How was your meeting? He asked, his tone carefully casual. Informative, Zara replied, removing her shawl. Elizabeth has arranged everything: housing, employment, even an allowance until I receive my first wages. Lawson nodded. She sounds like a caring relative. She is. We were close as children. Zara sat across from him at the small table. The stagecoach leaves at 9 tomorrow morning. Have you decided then? His voice was steady, but Zara detected a slight tension in his posture. Not yet. I wanted to speak with you first. Lawson's eyebrows rose slightly. About? Zara took a deep breath. About us. About what might be possible here if I stayed. A shadow crossed his face. Zara, no, please, she interrupted. Let me speak while I have the courage. She leaned forward, her eyes meeting his. When I suggested marriage before, it was primarily practical. A solution to a difficult situation. But these past days, working alongside you, getting to know you, my feelings have changed. Deepened. Lawson's expression grew guarded. What are you saying? I'm saying that I care for you, Lawson. More than I expected to. And if I stayed, it wouldn't be just for protection or propriety anymore. He stood abruptly, moving to the window, his back to her. You're confused. Grateful. It's natural after what you've been through. Don't tell me what I feel, Zara said, rising as well. I know my own heart. Do you? He turned to face her, his expression pained. A few weeks ago, you were bound for California with dreams of teaching. Now you're considering giving all that up for what? A blacksmith in a backwater town. For a good man who treats me with respect, who sees me as a person, not a commodity or a burden. Zara stepped closer to him. For the possibility of building something meaningful together. Lawson shook his head. You have a chance at a real future in Sacramento. Security, respectability, work you love. I won't be the reason you throw that away. Shouldn't that be my choice? Not if you're making it for the wrong reasons. His voice softened slightly. Zara, listen to me. I've been alone a long time. I'm set in my ways. I'm not the kind of man who can give a woman the life she deserves. You don't get to decide what I deserve, Zara countered, frustration rising. And you haven't answered my question: what might be possible between us if I stayed? Lawson was silent for a long moment, conflict evident in his eyes. Finally, he spoke, his voice barely audible. I don't know, and that's the God's honest truth. I haven't allowed myself to think beyond each day for years now. His honesty disarmed her. Zara's anger deflated, replaced by understanding. Then think about it now. Please. Their eyes held, the air between them charged with unspoken emotions. Slowly, hesitantly, Lawson raised his hand to her cheek, his calloused fingers gentle against her skin. If circumstances were different, he murmured. If we had met in another time, another place. We didn't, Zara said simply. We met here. Now, after everything that brought us to this moment. Something shifted in Lawson's expression, a softening, a surrender. Zara felt it mirrored in her own heart as he leaned forward, closing the distance between them. His lips met hers in a kiss, so tender it brought tears to her eyes, a kiss that spoke of longing, of possibility, of feelings too new and fragile for words. When they parted, Lawson rested his forehead against hers, his eyes closed as if in prayer. I can't ask you to stay, he whispered. Not when leaving offers you so much more. What if staying offers me something I need more than security or respectability? Zara asked softly. What if it offers me a chance at happiness? Lawson drew back slightly, searching her face. And if it doesn't? If you stay and come to regret it? Then I'll have made my choice with open eyes. Zara smiled gently. And you'll still have that $200 set aside for me. A reluctant chuckle escaped him. You're a stubborn woman, Zara Calloway. So I've been told. She grew serious again. I'm not asking for promises, Lawson. Just a chance to see what might grow between us, day by day. He was quiet for a long moment, his internal struggle visible in his eyes. Finally, he nodded. "All right. If you're certain this is what you want, I won't stand in your way." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "I won't lie and say the thought of you leaving hasn't been tearing me apart inside." The admission, so simply stated yet so profound, filled Zara with warmth. "Then I'll stay," she said with quiet conviction. "I'll write to Elizabeth explaining my decision." Relief and something like joy transformed Lawson's face. He drew her close again, his embrace conveying what words could not: gratitude, tenderness, and the first tentative strands of love. As Zara rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart, she knew with certainty that she had made the right choice. The path ahead might not be the one she had envisioned for herself, but it was the one her heart had chosen. The following morning, Zara met Frederick Patterson at the hotel to inform him of her decision. Though clearly surprised, he received the news with graciousness. "I trust you've considered carefully, Miss Calloway," he said, handing her a sealed letter. "This is from your cousin. I was to give it to you regardless of your choice." Zara opened it to find a bank draft for $500 and a note expressing Elizabeth's unconditional support, whatever path Zara chose. "Please tell Elizabeth I'm grateful beyond words," Zara said, tucking the letter and draft away. "And that I will write to her soon with a full explanation." Patterson nodded. "I'll convey your message. And if I may say so, I hope your Mr. Gabriel appreciates what you're giving up for him." "I'm not giving up anything," Zara corrected gently. "I'm choosing something different." As the stagecoach departed without her, Zara felt a momentary pang of uncertainty. Then she turned toward the smithy toward Lawson and knew in her heart that some journeys weren't measured in miles, but in the courage to stay where love beckoned. 2 weeks later, on a clear September morning, Zara and Lawson stood before Reverend Miller in his small study. Their wedding was a simple affair, no guests save Mrs. Thornton and her husband as witnesses, no elaborate preparations. Zara wore her blue dress, freshly laundered and adorned with a lace collar she had purchased with a small portion of Elizabeth's gift. Lawson wore his best shirt, his usually unruly hair neatly combed, his face clean-shaven for the occasion. As they exchanged vows, Zara marveled at how quickly her life had changed from captivity to freedom, from despair to hope, from a marriage proposed as convenience to one entered with love blooming in her heart. When Reverend Miller pronounced them husband and wife, Lawson's kiss was no longer tentative, but filled with promise. Mrs. Thornton dabbed at her eyes, clearly moved by the union she had quietly encouraged. "Never thought I'd see the day," Dr. Thornton commented good-naturedly as they signed the marriage certificate. Lawson Gabriel, confirmed bachelor, taken by Cupid's arrow at last. Lawson's response was typically understated. "Found something worth changing for," he said simply, his eyes meeting Zara's with a warmth that needed no elaboration. They walked back to the smithy, their home now, truly hand in hand. Word of their marriage spread quickly through Redemption Creek, met with reactions ranging from surprise to speculation to genuine goodwill. The crude comments Zara had overheard weeks earlier were silenced, replaced by grudging respect for the blacksmith who had defied convention to do what he believed right. Life settled into a new rhythm. Zara took over management of Lawson's accounts, discovering he had been undercharging for his skilled work for years. With gentle persistence, she convinced him to raise his prices to reflect the true value of his craftsmanship. To his surprise, business increased rather than declined. When the town council announced plans to establish a proper school, Zara volunteered her services. By December, she was teaching reading and arithmetic to 12 students in a converted storeroom while awaiting completion of the schoolhouse. The position paid little, but the work fulfilled her in ways she had always hoped. Lawson, meanwhile, found himself drawn gradually from his self-imposed isolation. With Zara by his side at church services and community gatherings, he began forming connections he had previously avoided. His natural reticence never fully disappeared, but the hard edges of his solitude softened. Their marriage, begun with such uncertainty, deepened with each passing day. What had started as attraction mingled with gratitude evolved into a partnership built on mutual respect and growing affection. They learned each other's habits, preferences, strengths, and weaknesses. They argued occasionally, Zara's idealism clashing with Lawson's pragmatism, but always found their way back to common ground. And at night, in the privacy of their expanded living quarters, Lawson having built an addition to the smithy during the autumn months, they discovered the joy of physical intimacy that neither had anticipated when they first exchanged vows. Winter came to Redemption Creek with unusual severity that year. Snow piled high against buildings, and bitter winds howled down from the mountains. The smithy remained busy as broken sleigh runners and wagon parts needed constant repair. On Christmas Eve, as a blizzard raged outside, Zara and Lawson sat before their small fireplace, sharing mulled cider and the quiet contentment of being safe and warm together while nature's fury spent itself beyond their walls. "I have something for you," Lawson said, reaching beneath his chair to produce a small wooden box. Zara set aside her cup to accept it, surprised by the weight. Opening the lid, she gasped at what lay inside: a delicate silver necklace with a pendant in the shape of a book, tiny hinges allowing it to open. "Lawson, it's beautiful," she breathed, lifting it carefully. "Open it," he urged softly. Inside, he had somehow managed to inscribe in miniature, "No whip will ever touch you again. This I vow for all our days." Tears welled in Zara's eyes as she read the words, a promise made the day they met, now immortalized as a pledge for their future together. "I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything," Lawson replied, taking the necklace and moving to fasten it around her neck. "But I need to say something that's been in my heart for months now." His fingers brushed her skin as he secured the clasp. "I love you, Zara Gabriel. More than I thought possible after so many years of keeping to myself." The words, so simply spoken yet so profound, filled Zara with joy. She turned to face him, cupping his cheek in her palm. "And I love you, Lawson Gabriel, for your goodness, your quiet strength, and your steadfast heart." As their lips met in a kiss that conveyed all the emotion words could not, Zara knew with absolute certainty that the decision she had made that September morning had been the right one. Not because the path had been easy, it hadn't always been, but because it had led her to this moment, to this man, to this love that continued to deepen with each passing day. The blizzard might rage beyond their walls, but within, they had created something rare and precious, a sanctuary built not of timber and stone, but of trust, respect, and unwavering devotion. Spring 1876 arrived in Redemption Creek with a burst of wildflowers and renewed activity as winter's grip finally released the town. The new schoolhouse stood completed at last, and Zara's student population had grown to 23 children ranging from 5 to 16 years of age. Her reputation as a fair but demanding teacher had spread to outlying farms and ranches, bringing pupils who traveled considerable distances for the education she offered. Lawson's business thrived as well. Word of his craftsmanship had spread beyond the immediate area, bringing commissions for specialized work from as far away as Denver. He had taken on a young apprentice, 16-year-old Thomas Whitman, whose father had been killed in a mining accident, teaching the boy the trade while providing him with room and board in a small cabin Lawson had built behind the smithy. On a particularly fine April afternoon, as Zara was dismissing her students for the day, she noticed a stagecoach arriving, an unscheduled stop that immediately drew her curiosity. Gathering her books and papers, she watched as a well-dressed woman descended from the coach, looking around with evident interest. Something about the woman's bearing seemed familiar, and as she turned in Zara's direction, recognition dawned. Elizabeth Calloway Watson had come to Redemption Creek. Their reunion was tearful and joyous. After embraces and exclamations, Zara led her cousin to the smithy, where Lawson was working alongside his apprentice. "So this is the man who stole my cousin's heart," Elizabeth said warmly after introductions were made. "I've been most eager to meet you, Mr. Gabriel." Lawson, wiping his hands on a cloth, managed to smile despite his obvious discomfort at being the center of attention. "Just Lawson, madam. And I think it's fairer to say your cousin captured mine." Elizabeth laughed delightedly. "Well said. I can see already why Zara chose to stay." Over supper that evening, Elizabeth explained her unexpected visit. "When your letters spoke so eloquently of your life here, I simply had to see for myself. Frederick painted quite a picture upon his return, but I wanted to know this place and this man who had so transformed my quiet, bookish cousin into a frontier schoolteacher and blacksmith's wife." Zara smiled, reaching for Lawson's hand across the table. It has been a transformation for both of us, I think. Elizabeth's visit stretched from a planned 3 days to a full 2 weeks. She charmed the townsfolk with her elegant manners while displaying a surprising adaptability to frontier conditions. She observed Zara's teaching methods with genuine interest and spent hours in conversation with Lawson, drawing him out in a way few people managed. On her final evening in Redemption Creek, as they sat on the small porch Lawson had added to their home, Elizabeth made an announcement. "I've decided to endow your school, Zara," she said casually, as if discussing the weather. "A proper salary for you, funds for books and supplies, and a scholarship for children whose families cannot afford even modest fees." Zara stared at her cousin in shock. "Elizabeth, that's incredibly generous, but nothing," Elizabeth interrupted firmly. "James and I have been blessed with financial success beyond our needs. This is something meaningful we can do with our abundance." Her expression softened. "Consider it my way of honoring Uncle Richard's memory. He would be so proud of what you're building here." Tears welled in Zara's eyes at the mention of her father. He would have loved to see children learning in a proper schoolhouse, no matter how humble. "Then it's settled," Elizabeth declared. "My lawyer will handle the arrangements. You'll receive the first funds within the month." Later that night, after Elizabeth had retired to the small guest room, Zara and Lawson sat by the dying embers of the fire, contemplating the unexpected gift. "It changes things," Lawson observed quietly. "With proper funding, your school could become something significant." Zara nodded, leaning against his shoulder. "It opens possibilities I hadn't dared consider. But it doesn't change us, Lawson. It doesn't change what we've built together." He kissed the top of her head, his arm tightening around her. "No, it doesn't change that at all." After Elizabeth's departure, life in Redemption Creek continued its steady rhythm, but with subtle differences. The school flourished with new resources. Lawson's business expanded further, requiring a larger forge and eventually a second apprentice. Their home grew as well, additional rooms, a proper kitchen, and a small library filled with books Elizabeth sent regularly from Sacramento. Through it all, Zara and Lawson remained each other's anchors, supporting, challenging, and loving one another through difficulties and triumphs alike. The town that had once been merely a place of refuge became truly their home, its people their extended family. On their first wedding anniversary, they visited the grave of Lawson's niece together, placing wildflowers on the small plot marked by the angel he had forged in his grief. As they stood hand in hand beneath the September sun, Zara felt a fullness in her heart that transcended words. "I have something to tell you," she said softly as they walked back toward town. Lawson glanced at her, noting the special quality in her voice. "What is it?" Zara stopped, turning to face him with eyes bright with emotion. "In about 7 months, our family will grow by one." For a moment, Lawson stood frozen, processing her words. Then his face transformed with a joy so pure it nearly took Zara's breath away. He gathered her in his arms, holding her as if she were made of the most precious material on earth. "Are you certain?" he whispered against her hair. "Dr. Thornton confirmed it yesterday," Zara replied, happy tears spilling onto her cheeks. "Are you pleased?" Lawson drew back to look into her eyes, his own suspiciously damp. "Pleased doesn't begin to describe it. I never thought. After Rebecca's baby, I never allowed myself to hope for this." Zara understood then the depth of his emotion, not just joy for their coming child, but healing for the wound that had kept him isolated for so long. The nephew or niece he had lost would always be remembered, but now new life would bring fresh purpose and joy. "I love you, Lawson Gabriel," she said simply, standing on tiptoe to kiss him. "More than I ever thought possible when you first said those words to me on that auction platform." "No whip will ever touch you again," he murmured against her lips, echoing his vow. "And you've kept that promise," Zara replied softly. "In its place, you've given me love, respect, and a future brighter than I dared dream." As they continued their walk home, Lawson's protective arm around her shoulders, Zara reflected on the strange, winding path that had brought her to this moment. From the terror of the auction platform to the sanctuary of Lawson's forge, from a marriage proposed out of practicality to a union founded on the deepest love, each step, even the painful ones, had led her home. In the years that followed, Zara and Lawson Gabriel became pillars of the growing community that Redemption Creek evolved into. Their daughter, Rebecca Elizabeth, born in April 1877, was joined 2 years later by a son, Richard Lawson. The children grew strong and curious, equally at home in their mother's schoolroom and their father's smithy. The town prospered and expanded. The railroad arrived in 1880, bringing new opportunities and challenges. Through it all, the Gabriel family remained a constant presence: the schoolteacher who had brought education and culture, the blacksmith whose integrity was as solid as the metal he shaped, and their children who embodied the best of both. Sometimes, on quiet evenings when the children were asleep, Zara would touch the silver book pendant Lawson had given her that first Christmas, a tangible reminder of the promise that had started their journey together. And in those moments, she would offer silent thanks for the man who had seen her value when she stood battered and bound, who had recognized her strength when she felt most vulnerable, and who had loved her faithfully through all the seasons of their shared life. For in the end, it was not the absence of hardship that defined their happiness, but the presence of unwavering love that transformed even the darkest moments into stepping stones toward a future built together, day by day, with courage, compassion, and abiding devotion.